We all probably have an image of what a shepherd is, and what did a shepherd do? Maybe that image comes because we hear the 23rd Psalm very often, "The Lord is my shepherd," and we picture a man that looks like Jesus, maybe with a beard and long hair and dark eyes, cradling a sheep in his arm, maybe sitting under a tree. Maybe we see that the shepherd allowed the sheep all day long just to graze on their own, but didn't really have to worry about them beyond that. Actually, shepherds had pretty difficult jobs. Whatever your job is, probably would be considered easy in comparison to what shepherds did, because they never got a day off. They were on 365 days a year, and they worked 24 hours a day. They were very valuable to landowners because when a landowner had a lot of shepherds, it meant that he had a lot of land, that he was very wealthy. And the shepherds were asked to take care of the sheep. So they had many responsibilities because not only did they have to be there and be present to them, they had to be on the watch. Shepherds had to be meteorologists because they needed to look out for the weather. To know if a storm was coming, would the sheep have to go in? Would there have to be protection there for them? Shepherds also had to be protectors. They had to be like security guards because there were wolves around. As the gospel tells us today, the wolves would come in, they would kind of tear up the sheep and create havoc and chaos. So the shepherd had to make sure that the wolves didn't come in. They had to be always awake and on the watch. And also, they were responsible for these sheep. So if one of them wandered off, it would probably come out of their pay. And it would be kind of sad, actually, because the rest of the sheep would know that one of the fold was missing. So the shepherd would have to go out and look for that particular lost sheep, would have to make sure that he was a gatekeeper and a good one at that. So when we hear Jesus today speaking about being the good shepherd, we know certainly that he was not a lazy shepherd. We know that Jesus wasn't a shepherd who begrudgingly watches the sheep, but rather as the good shepherd, he does it out of love. He does it out of great love for each one of us. You see, Jesus as the good shepherd knows each one of us through and through. And so he's very dedicated to his particular role as the Son of the Father in order to take care of all of the other children. And that's us. You see, there was a story in the scriptures, comes very early on in Genesis, in Abraham when he was brought out to the field at a time before there was any electricity. And Abraham looked up at the sky, and God said to Abraham, "Look at all the stars in the sky. If you've ever gone to a place where there's really very few lights, or if you go to the beach in the evening, there's no lights along the shoreline, you'll see a lot of stars." God said to Abraham, "You see all those stars up there? Each one of those are your descendants. There's one for each one of the people that will be created throughout all of time." So that's us. We're like those stars in the sky. So God created us. He loves us. He calls us by name. You know, names are very special when we're named by our parents. Parents spend a lot of time thinking about what they should name their child. Sometimes they don't actually give the name until they've seen the child's face, until they feel like maybe they know that child. And God calls each one of us by name. So if you're somebody that struggles with names, can you imagine what God has to go through? Because he has to call each one of us. Whether it be Katie, John, Sandra, Cody, or Alex. Whether it be Kyle or David. Whether our name happens to be Stephen. Whether our name happens to be Sam or Janet or Nicole. Maybe our name happens to be Barb or Robert. Perhaps it's Ada or Michael. Maybe our name happens to be Jean. No matter what our name is, God is calling us. Just think about that. How many times in a day does God call our name as the Good Shepherd? How often is God calling us and maybe we don't even respond? Maybe we kind of tuned God out, but he's trying to speak to us in so many ways. Because just like the shepherd knows the name of the sheep, God knows us. And God knows what's good for us as well. So he tries to make sure that we do not ignore him. Jesus, as the Good Shepherd, helps to protect us. He protects us from really a lot of intrusion in our lives. You see, each one of us kind of invites people into our lives. Sometimes we invite temptation in. It might be in the form of the devil. I don't know what your greatest temptations are, but God kind of comes in and says, I'm going to protect you from that. You see, God gives us a conscience. And because we have a conscience, we can make decisions of right from wrong. You see, as the shepherd, Jesus allows us a lot of freedom. Just think about it for a moment of all the things that we can do. But you know, good boundaries make for good relationships. So he also sets a boundary. And whenever it is that we may wander off, the shepherd, the Good Shepherd of Jesus Christ, comes and takes us back. He gives us mercy. He gives us forgiveness. He gives us the gift of his continued hope for tomorrow. And Jesus, as the Good Shepherd, also knows that there might be times in our life that we wander away from him. Just think about that for a moment. Has there ever been a time in your life that you maybe didn't have time for God, or you didn't see religion as a priority? Maybe a day when you said, I'm not going to pray today, or you woke up in the morning and it was a beautiful morning. You said, I'm not going to go to Mass today. I'm going to go out and enjoy the beautiful day. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night worrying about something, or you never got to sleep because there was something on your mind that you were concerned about. On that particular day, maybe you wondered where God was. As the Good Shepherd, he's never far behind. Because even though we may wander sometimes from the fold, he always calls us back. Maybe in some way he gives us a beautiful sign. Maybe it's an invitation. Maybe it's a way of saying, you have a relationship with me. Stay with me. And so we place ourselves in the presence of God in order to feel the beauty of his love and of his goodness. Maybe we wonder, well, why do we go to church on a Sunday? I can go, and I hear people tell me this all the time if I'm out at a restaurant, and I get into very interesting conversations with waiters and waitresses. When you're in a collar, it's like an invitation to tell me your life's history, which is wonderful. It's great. You just never know what conversation you might get into. And some people today, they're pretty bold. They're like, I don't have time for religion. When someone says that, I feel like I've just been slapped in the face. It's sort of, maybe you feel that way as well. That's just kind of like, that's ridiculous. I believe in God, but I don't need religion. We do need religion. We do need a symbolism and places where we can go, where we can be forced to find God. Church does that. Holy ground does that, because we're not just all little individual minions of the Almighty, each going our own way. He calls us into community. He calls us to be a family. He called you to be here tonight. Maybe you're here because mom and dad said you have to go to church tonight, or your wife nagged you all afternoon that you're going to go today at 5:30 for Mass. But whatever that invitation, that nagging was, I assure you, someone else was waiting for you. Someone else was waiting for you, and that is the presence of Christ. That is Jesus Christ here in the beauty of our own home here of Annunciation. That in the tabernacle there is that real presence of Christ. So maybe, Mike Brick, why don't you tell me, why is it that we know that Jesus is present there? Like, how can we tell when you walk into a Catholic church, what is there that tells you, yes, Jesus is in the house?
Look for the sanctuary lamp.
The candle, the sanctuary lamp, very good. And when that candle is lit, it means that Jesus is in the tabernacle. Now, is there ever a time that maybe that candle's not lit? Mrs. Sprinkle, what do you think? Is there ever a time that that candle's not lit? Just think about it. You're so good. I knew you would know the answer, so high five for that one. Good Friday, Holy Saturday. It's extinguished Holy Thursday. And we light it again on the Easter Vigil. So Jesus is present there. The Good Shepherd is here with us. He's just reaching out, saying, "Come to me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon your shoulder and learn from me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Tonight, as we celebrate the Good Shepherd, maybe we need to just think in our own hearts, how can Jesus shepherd us? Maybe what is it that we need from him this evening? What is it that we need from God this evening, or that we perceive that we need this evening, in order for him to continue to love us, to embrace us, give us his mercy, and to give us an incredible manner and example of being a shepherd?